They were a tiny nation on the edge of Europe, yet they built the first truly global empire, a colossal network of trade and conquest that spanned 6 centuries and 4 continents. But how did Portugal, a small kingdom, manage to claim half the world before anyone else even set sail? The history of the world's first global power. From the humid spice markets of Goa to the endless sugarcane fields of Brazil, the Portuguese Empire was a titan that changed the course of human history. For hundreds of years, their ships ruled the seas, their forts dictated trade, and their culture was imprinted on civilizations from Africa to Asia. You think you know the story of colonization? You haven't seen anything yet. We're going back to the beginning. To the visionary prince, the daring voyages, the brutal conquests, and the ultimate dramatic collapse of an empire that was too large to hold. Prepare to discover the forgotten history of the world's first superpower, the dawn of empire, 1415 to 1498. Our story doesn't begin on the ocean, but in the dust and heat of North Africa. It is the year 1415. Europe is still medieval, its eyes fixed inward. But for the small, young kingdom of Portugal, hemmed in by the vast Atlantic and the powerful kingdom of Castile, the only way forward was out. Their first great act of defiance was the capture of Ceuta, a vital Muslim port city right across the Strait of Gibraltar. This wasn't just a military victory, it was an intelligence coup. Inside Ceuta, the Portuguese were stunned by the exotic goods flowing in from the south: gold, ivory, slaves, and perhaps most tantalizingly, knowledge of vast, untapped lands south of the Sahara Desert. This event lit a fire under the Portuguese royalty, a fire that would be relentlessly stoked by one man, Infante D. Henrique, known to history as Prince Henry the Navigator. Prince Henry, despite his romantic title, was not a sailor. He was a wealthy, religious, and intensely pragmatic patron of maritime exploration. His base, Sagres, became a crucible of innovation, a meeting place for cartographers, astronomers, and ship designers. The primary problem they faced was simple: fear of the unknown, combined with a technological hurdle. The great challenge was the coast of West Africa. Ships of the time were not built for the Atlantic. Sailing south was easy, but returning north meant beating against perpetual northerly winds and the strong Canary Current. Sailors feared the so-called Green Sea of Darkness, and popular myth suggested the waters past Cape Bojader boiled under the equatorial sun. This is where Portuguese innovation shines. Henry's sponsored engineers perfected the caravel, a sleek, small ship utilizing lateen, triangular sails borrowed from the Arabs. This revolutionary design allowed the Portuguese to tack against the wind, making a return voyage possible. The psychological barrier of Cape Bojader was finally broken in 1434 by the Captain Gilleans. The event itself was anticlimactic. The sea did not boil, but the breakthrough was monumental. It opened up the African coast, triggering a century of relentless, profitable exploration. The Golden Route. Portuguese established a strategic pattern: explore, establish a feitoria, a fortified trading post, and profit. First, they settled the uninhabited Atlantic islands. Madeira became a massive sugarcane plantation, requiring imported labor. The Azores became a vital stopping point and resupply station for transatlantic voyages. The Cape Verde Islands, further south, became key centers for the emerging slave trade, a dark stain that quickly became central to the empire's economy. The Portuguese built the mighty fortress of São Jorge de Mina, Elmina, in 1482. This castle, built without permission, was a statement of power. It secured their dominance over the immensely lucrative trade in gold, bypassing the old trans-Saharan routes. This gold poured into Lisbon, financing the next, and arguably most critical, phase of the empire. By the late 15th century, Portugal was rich, but not yet dominant. The real prize lay far, far to the east: spice. Spices, cinnamon, cloves, nutmeg, and most importantly, pepper, were the lifeblood of global commerce. They were used for preservation, medicine, and as a potent status symbol. The issue? They were controlled by a complex, centuries-old monopoly. Spices traveled from the jungles of Southeast Asia, through the Indian Ocean, via Arab and Indian merchants, to the Mamluk Sultanate in Egypt. From there, they were purchased by the great Italian city-states, Venice and Genoa, who controlled their distribution into Europe, demanding exorbitant prices at every step. The challenge was clear. Portugal needed to break the monopoly, but the only way to do that was to sail around the massive, uncharted continent of Africa. The royal house of Avish poured all its resources into this singular goal. In 1488, Bartolomé accomplished the impossible. Caught in a brutal Atlantic storm, his ships were blown far south. When the storm cleared, he realized he had sailed right around the bottom of Africa without seeing it. He had found a route, which King John II wisely named the Cape of Good Hope. The door was open, but it took nearly another decade to prepare the next, final push. On July 8, 1497, under the command of Vasco da Gama, a fleet of 4 ships left Lisbon. This was not a voyage of gentle exploration. It was a brazen attempt to invade the most sophisticated trade network on Earth. Da Gama's journey was a masterwork of navigation, utilizing the Volta do Mar, turn of the sea, route to swing far west into the Atlantic before catching the South Atlantic winds. After rounding the Cape, da Gama entered the complex, cosmopolitan world of the East African Swahili coast. He was not met by savages, but by wealthy, cultured Muslim trading cities like Mombasa and Malindi, whose merchants possessed maps and navigational instruments far superior to his own. Arrival in India, the Estado de India is born. The moment of truth arrived on May 20th, 1498. Vasco da Gama's fleet dropped anchor in the port of Calicut, Kozhikode, on the Malabar coast of India. The Portuguese had arrived. The mission was a success, but the immediate result was a humiliating failure. When da Gama presented his gifts to the powerful local ruler, the Zamarin, they were laughable. A few paltry cloaks, some hats, and jars of honey. The sophisticated Indian court, accustomed to trading in diamonds, silks, and gold, was deeply unimpressed. A local merchant reportedly scornfully noted to da Gama, "The king of Calicut has 100 such things. If you wish to trade, you must send proper goods." Da Gama's mission was clear. He failed to trade, but he succeeded in finding the route. The open loop was now closed. Portugal knew the way to the source of the spice. This seemingly minor event, this initial failure, was the genesis of the Portuguese Empire's defining philosophy in Asia. Since they couldn't compete with the established Arab and Indian traders in quality or price, they would compete in the only way they knew how: unrivaled, brutal military force. King Manuel I, the Fortunate, knew that to maintain control, they couldn't just have a presence. They needed a monopoly. The answer was the Estado de India, the State of India, which was essentially a network of heavily fortified coastal outposts, not a territorial empire. Their strategy was called the Blue Water Strategy, total control of the sea lanes. Unlike the Venetians or the Genoese, the Portuguese armed their ships with heavy, bronze cannon, a terrifying military advantage in the Indian Ocean. The architect of this naval supremacy was the brilliant, ruthless Afonso de Albuquerque. Albuquerque grasped the concept of strategic choke points. He argued that controlling the main points of maritime traffic was the key to dominating trade. In just 5 years, he achieved 3 monumental conquests. 1510, Goa, India. Taken from the Bijapur Sultanate, this became the permanent, administrative capital of the Estado de India. It gave Portugal a large, well-defended base on the Indian subcontinent. 1511, Malacca, Malay Peninsula, the gateway to China, Japan, and the Spice Islands. Controlling Malacca meant controlling virtually all shipping traffic between the Indian Ocean and the Pacific. 1515, Hormuz, Persian Gulf. The fortress at the mouth of the Persian Gulf gave them command over the lucrative trade routes originating in Persia and Mesopotamia. With these 3 points, Goa, Malacca, and Hormuz, the Portuguese declared the Indian Ocean a mare clausum, closed sea. Any non-Portuguese ship sailing without a Portuguese permit, called a Cartaz, was liable to be seized or sunk. Portugal had weaponized maritime trade. They had achieved the impossible. They had established the world's first ever protection racket on a global scale. This tiny nation of barely 1 million people now had its hands on the throat of global commerce. They had solved their problem of accessing spices by creating a brand new, terrifying challenge for everyone else on the planet. In less than a century, the Portuguese had turned the medieval world on its head. They did not settle for the easy coastal raids. They went straight for the world's most valuable economic system and broke it through sheer nautical and military audacity. But this era of unchallenged supremacy was short-lived. This colossal empire, stitched together by ships and forts, was immensely difficult to defend. Rivals were rising, new continents, like Brazil, were demanding attention, and the cost of maintaining this estado to India would eventually become crushing. The question is, how long could this small kingdom hold on to half the world? And what terrible compromises would they be forced to make to keep the empire alive? The empire's next great era involves a colossal, unexpected discovery in the West.
If you like this kind of documentary, don't forget to subscribe for more history content.